Well, hello, and welcome to Virtual Collage Jam for, what day is it today, Kat? It's February 24th. And I can see my color balance is very blue, so, but I have to have the windows open. Well, not the actual windows, but the blind open, because just psychologically, it's really nice to have some natural light. So, and it's natural daylight is blue, so we're going to go with it. Welcome aboard. And today our prompt comes courtesy of Februallage, which is a month-long, February-long collage challenge. So there's an Instagram feed if you look for Februallage. And if you look for hashtag Februallage, you'll see all kinds of collages. And each person, like everyone takes on the theme, tries to get through all 28 days or 29 days on a leap year. And I know Val, who's often here, is usually going through Februallage. She's probably done them already. She's often ahead. But I thought it would be fun to use one of the prompts for our jam. Hey, Jane. Awesome. Nice to have you back. I think we missed you last week, so glad to have you here again. And hello, Lisa. Hello, Annie. Oh, awesome, awesome. And hi, Irina. You were the very first poster. So glad to have you along. And as is often the case, I don't have a plan. I am going to get out my collage materials and see what happens. So, do you have any ideas for Lost? When I was looking for something among my amidst my collage pieces to use for the YouTube thumbnail, I saw a few that struck me that could stand in for Lost, and I ended up choosing one called Running on Empty, which was kind of about the sort of bankruptcy of North American culture, I guess, because it had sort of some city scenes. It had vintage cars and face, a woman's figure, but without the face. And I was just thinking, there are all these issues. This was made a few years before now. So even more so now. So US is definitely in a period of being lost. But I don't want to go there right now because we need a little break from that, don't we? Hello, Janice. Awesome. Janice says she's working on Lost in Space. I love that. That's a really fun one. Excuse me. Let us know in the comments what if you have an idea for Lost, or if you're just going to see if you can find one now, like I am. And she said, used to love that TV show. So, yeah, I'm not familiar with it, which is, my pop culture references are not as thorough as they should be. So I've heard the name, but I don't think if I saw it, I was very young and I don't remember it. So, but I'm sure I could find some of it on YouTube, which might be entertaining. So, all right, so I'm going to switch to my overhead camera and let's get this party started. Lisa says, it's sort of sad, but a lost pet poster. Of course it is. I mean, that's sad, but that's perfect, right? I mean, there are a few different there are many myriad possibilities for Lost, right? It could be someone who's lost. It could, like, lost as opposed to one, right? It could be lost as like lost in the wilderness. It could be lost psychologically. It could be lost pet, exactly lost in space, right? So it's one of those words that is, you can take it a lot of different directions, which makes it a good prompt, right? It's specific enough, but also open-ended enough to take it the direction you want to. So yeah, so hopefully the direction I come up with will be interesting, but even if not, the collaging will, the fact of working on it should be. So, all right, so I'm going to switch to the overhead camera. Just beware, it's going to go black for a minute or two while I just get that camera in the mount, but we will be back in a moment, so do not adjust your set. And we'll see how bad the color balance is on the desk. It's not as bad as it was on me, so that's good. Push this over a little bit. And get out my handy dandy collage materials, collage tools, and figure out what is going to happen. Now I'm wishing I had spent just a few minutes. No, now we've got the balance all mixed up again. Oh well, it's fluctuating color balance. The color balance is fluctuating. Sorry, guys. It's funny is that looks pretty good, but as soon as I bring the white paper in, oh well. Usually, well, it used to be when I was more prepared for collage jams, when I was starting out, I would jot down a few ideas what I was going to collage, and I'd gathered the right materials ahead of time. But I'm kind of thinking like some sort of figure in some sort of feeling of space, like not space like Janice is thinking necessarily, but like in a landscape that feels, or escape, maybe not a landscape, but an escape of some kind that feels sort of alien or new. So that might be interesting. So I'm going to grab a couple of magazines and just look for some figure that I might place in an environment like that. Oh, and I have to switch my glasses. I can't to my collaging glasses from my excuse me, from my computing glasses. There we go. Ah, yes. Now I can see what I'm looking at. This back section, which is advertisers and so on, will often have small figures, so that actually works out well. I don't know, a lost baby is a little bit of a, I'm not sure I'm willing to go there, but but it's an option. you can probably barely make this out, but this is a picture of a couple of fashionable women looking like they're getting on a plane or whatever, but they've got their little purse dogs with them, and one of them's got her hand up to her face like she's looking at a vista. And I just thought, that's just so like that would be ripe for putting in a strange land, like she's like dressed to get into a cab, or in this case a private jet, and go to some fancy party. But like putting her then in somewhere that is very much not that setting would be amusing. Wow, it's hard to believe that anyone can actually, these pictures are so small. This is a picture from the bridal section, and it's a woman whose face is partially obscured by a bouquet. And there's something interesting and about a woman getting married and becoming lost. Hopefully not. That isn't the case for us, but definitely some people marry for the wrong reasons, right? And they lose themselves in their relationship, and it's certainly a pitfall especially for younger people. I think, especially, not, it can be for anyone, but especially younger people. So that, I think, has potential for lost. So this is interesting. This is a picture of a couple of women, sort of, one's facing into the scene and the other one's looking over at her. And I was thinking, oh, I could cut them out and have them going into some very strange world. But there's something about lost that, of course, you can be lost with more than one person, but somehow I think it's sort of most poignant or most powerful when it's an individual rather than more than one person. I mean, you can be lost in a crowd, obviously, right? And that's actually an interesting idea too, lost in a crowd. So that's actually something I might play with. I don't know. I'll check in with your comments in a minute or two and see what you guys are talking about. Hopefully one or two of you have posted what you're thinking about. And hopefully you're not lost in terms of what you're going to do for lost. There's also the idea of, which actually leads me back to some of those earlier images. So of cutting out a figure and using the absence of the figure, which is something I like to do with my collages as well. So just playing with the negatives. So that might be an interesting game to play as well. And so now I'm looking for like an interesting silhouette that isn't, these are interesting silhouettes, but I think without the figure in them, they will be hard to read. I don't know. So there's something about the idea of being lost that a dynamic figure doesn't seem to suit. It seems to be like, I think the most poignant would be like someone sort of at a standstill, right? Someone who's just standing there. So that oftentimes that's what you find in fashion magazines, but this particular article or piece has lots of dynamic poses. And there's something to me about the back, like it needs to be the back of someone. Now, I guess if it's if I'm cutting it out and just using the negatives, it might not necessarily be as critical, but yeah. So I'll check another magazine for that. Meanwhile, what are you guys talking about here? Okay, Philippa says she can't get any sound yet. So I'm just going to put a comment because she probably can't hear me. So I assume the rest of you guys can hear me, hopefully. So if someone can just say that you're hearing me all right, hopefully. I do see my microphone registering my voice, so hopefully that is the case. Maybe Philippa's computer sound isn't on. Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Just double check because, yeah. So Lisa says, "How's Kim?" She's actually good. She's doing her. She's using her Limbo, which is a device to monitor blood sugar to help her fast. Actually, not fast. She is fasting today, but that's not what it's for. It's to help her keep her blood sugar from spiking. It's more of a like you could use it for diabetics, but it's not for that. It's just to level out one's blood sugar, and that is can be a weight loss plan, and that's what she's doing. So so she's learned, like she's got to really steer clear of carbohydrates. The idea is to keep your blood sugar from jumping way up or way down. And so so basically she eats a lot of protein and vegetables and not very much carbohydrate at all. So Philippa said, "Oh, okay, I didn't even see this, Philippa. Okay, sorry. You've got me in the living room on TV, so all is good. All right, thank you. Sorry about that." And Annie says, "Lost keys." Exactly. I mean, how many of us have panicked? Like that is always the major panic moment, right? When you can't find the keys. So yeah, that's perfect, right? And keys are also really, really a nice metaphor for access and for getting to where you want to be, right? And then when you don't have them, being locked out, that is That's, or lock, or not being able to leave, right? Because you can't find your keys. That's, yeah, that's a perfect one. Oh, this book, this one is so, it's so thick, it's hard to flip. It has a mind of its own. Yeah, this pose is kind of what I was thinking about. Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking through for some other options. So isn't this like glorious? This just huge, huge shot. I just adore the scale of these images. So I was thinking about taking this one as a possibility to work with. And then I saw this image on the back, and I don't want to lose that. I want to use that in something. So, so I think I'll not use that one. All right, I think I've got enough to get started, actually. And we'll just see where they go from there. The first thought I had, which is pretty basic, but is to take the watch faces off and the eye out. And then, like, if you can't see, you're lost. If you don't know what time it is, you can be lost too, right? So there's something about that. It's a bit cliche, but I'm going to start with that. I often find that just like starting with something predictable or cliche, or maybe not your favorite idea, but starting anyway can be useful just to get the engine running. And every once in a while, I start with something that I think isn't going to lead anywhere, but then something changes, and it does. So I don't want to throw out that option in case, be open to it, right? this is just a little technical thing, but if you have a few circles to cut out or shapes that are similar, I forgot to do it on the first one, but what I'll often do is, because my hand works best in sort of a certain way, like this way is good, but this way is a lot harder. So what I'll do is I'll cut from like 9 to 12 on each of those circles and then rotate it and then cut again, that using that same optimal part of my cutting, like my most comfortable position. And then I'll cut some more on each one of the circles. Then I'll rotate the image again and cut some more until I'm all the way around on all of them. So she has like a nubbly sweater on, and so something I'll do with that is also useful, like if you're cutting something like that out, you could very carefully follow each little nub. But what I'll often do is like just go into the dark just a little bit and then just wobble my knife. So I'm not actually being literal, but I am being true to the nature of it rather than the letter of it. And that makes life easier. So it depends on what it is. Like this hair, I cut according to the shapes. This one I'm going to wobble a little finer because the nap is sort of less noticeable on this one. But once something is cut out, you don't, like, you can, there are a bunch of dodges you can get away with that our mind will see as being accurate, even though they're not. When I used to trace maps, like for geography class or whatever, you would get the main shape, but you'd also, like, even if it was like a smooth shape, if you wobbled your line a little bit, it made it look more accurate. Like, oh, there's lots of detail in that line, right? Even if it's not strictly speaking accurate. Cartographers are rolling in their grave, but these were grade 8 assignments, right? So not no one was navigating by my maps. If they were, they might get lost, right? So there are the whole bunch more thoughts, right? Like maps and compasses and latitude and longitude, like all these things we do to avoid or to help prevent becoming lost. And like, so like a broken compass would be a really great metaphor, visual metaphor, or anything like that, or a torn map, right? Or a map that's got ink spilled on it, or a damaged map, right? Because suddenly now it can't do what we're relying on it to do. A cell phone with no power left is a more contemporary equivalent. So, is anyone here actually participating in the full month of of um, Februallage? I'd be curious. I'm pretty sure Val is, but she's not. I don't think she's with us today. So, um, and just to answer your question, Lisa, does she really miss the carbs? Um, yeah, I think she's now adjusting, so that's why I was pausing. But at first, definitely, right? Um, it's I think we all have different. We all work optimally, like on different proportions of macros, right? But definitely as we get older, I think we need less carbs. I noticed that, like personally, as I've been transitioning, I don't eat as much carbs. I'm still gaining weight, but I don't eat nearly the amount of carbs that I did as male. Um, so that's interesting. Um, I still crave them sometimes, but I find that I don't need to eat the volume that I did. Um, so yeah, so it's interesting. Um, but yeah, she's adjusting now, I think, to that. And she's also like, I think a lot of people would like, she's got her line on the app working the way it's supposed to for the most part, but her weight is only dropping very, very gradually. Now, gradually is good, but it's like really gradually. So she's a hard case, and she would find that things that were just these little, like, minor things would cause her blood sugar to spike way more than I think average. So I think her system was out of whack. So hopefully it'll change it, right? Like she'd have like she drinks cocoa without any sweetener and with only a very small amount of soy milk, and just the carbohydrate in the small amount of soy milk and the small amount in the cocoa will cause her blood sugar to spike, which is like, that's not spike, but go up. Like, it doesn't spike like crazy, like she had something sugary, but just a small amount, like, wow. So, a small amount will cause it to jump more than she would have thought. So, that's probably way more information than you need, but there you go. Sorry. It's along the lines of that. I think it was Oscar Wilde who said, "I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have time." The idea that, like, to get it edited down to something succinct actually takes more effort than the long version sometimes. Anyone who's had to, like, write an artist statement or a short bio or whatever for an artistic opportunity, it's like, okay, this has been really hard, but this is good. And oh, it's twice as long as it's supposed to be. So now I have to, like, whittle it down, right? So that can be a challenge. And, just on further to that idea of like editing something, you can do visual editing on work that you work on as well, right? So, and I think something I've said in many of my talks about creativity and so on is that making and editing are kind of like two different parts of the brain, and they don't usually work very well together. So the writing equivalent is like you write the first draft and it's too long, and then you go away and you come back and you take your creative hat off and you writer's hat and you put on your editor's hat, and then you go at it to see how can I, oh, this part's got too many words, that's expressed, that could be said more succinctly and so on. But the first one, you had to get it all out, right? And so the same can happen with collaging or any form of visual art. You're creative, you've got a whole bunch of ideas, you maybe put too many ideas into one piece, or you add a lot of detail or whatever, and then you go, oh wow, that's got a lot of stuff on it. That's kind of overwhelming. And then it's best if you leave it for a while and then you come back later, and then you okay, that part's too busy, I'm going to paste something over top of that, I'm going to cut that part out and tear it off and put something else that's quieter there. So there's this, I find usually the first go at something is more, it's busier, right? It's busier or it's fuller. Occasionally it's needs to go the other way. The editing is adding stuff, but I think more often it's paring it back a little bit. And it also depends on the nature of what you like, right? I kind of like stuff that is more, and I also like less is more. So I will often have to decide which way is this particular piece going to go. Do I want it to be busier? Do I want it to be less busy? And what does the piece need it to be, right? So, so some random thoughts on editing there for you. Annie, awesome. So Annie says she is working for the full month of Februallage. So how are you doing, Annie? Are you up to date or are you close? Lisa says, wow, hardcore cocoa, no sugar. I'm with her in the struggle. All the best to her. Thank you. Yeah, I know. Cocoa without any sweetening, that takes some getting used to for sure. Yeah. And Lisa says, no, it's all right for the babbling on. Thank you. Awesome, Annie. Annie says she's done already. We're on the 24th and she's already got the month done. So are you doing a different take on Lost, or are you just doing something else, seeing as you've already done Lost for sure? So. So just thought, sorry, oh man, this voice sometimes, eh? All right, so this voice, wow, where'd that come from? This piece, I thought I'd just try slipping a few things under, like an image or a solid color. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's where I want to go, like to continue this one, but this may find its way into another collage, or I may come back to it for loss. But I think what I'm going to do next is take this figure out and then see whether that's something interesting. Seeing as this guy's got, he's sort of standing there, and he's got, even once I've cut it out, it'll have a very sort of a hip cut to the suit and to the trousers, and he's holding a bag. There is this kind of feeling that I've arrived here, and if we suddenly change the context into which he's in, it could definitely be a sort of a lost kind of feeling. Like having a bag definitely makes you feel like you're a traveler. This is another place where sometimes you have to make things up if like where the shoes end and where the shadow begins is hard to tell. So I am just making some of it up. So something else. So this morning I was working on, well, actually it was yesterday. Sorry, yesterday I was working on a collage because a day collage, because I realized I kind of thought I had more collage work ready, that I'd done more last year, that I could show at the artist project. And then I realized, oh, yeah, I did do a bunch of work in the summer, but it was all for the Union Hotel. And that's sort of a commission, and that's their basically work I've done for them. So I thought, even though I did a lot of collage work, it's not really work to show at the artist project. So I realized, uh-oh, I better get busy. So yeah, I have to really put the hammer down to get some get some work done. The artist project isn't until May, but May is not that far away, especially when you don't have a lot of work made. So so I have a lot of going to be trying to squeeze collaging in between everything else along the way as much as I can. But if it weren't for deadlines, I would not get nearly enough work done. So while I am a little nervous, I'm also excited. So So, you know, I look at this piece that's just, it's basically just removed the figure, and it, because this image is so simplified, it's like on a foggy day, it looks like there's barely visible shoreline over there. And it's like twilight or something. There's some detail, like he's standing on a roof or a deck or something, but I kind of feel like it does the lost thing, but it's also not enough. It's still too much about the original setting and photographs, so I'll have to think about how to change that. Perhaps, for instance, all right, so here are a couple of thoughts. One is to replace this piece with another piece. And the other thought is to maybe take some of these squares out and replace them with something. So that's interesting. All right, so I'm going to think about that. And also like how to do that. So and what color I might want to use. So all right. Or what kind of image I might want to sub in. So I think things like space is a good, like space or wilderness, anything that feels kind of. And this is actually a great image, but it's from the original. The idea of like fog, right? Fog is great for wasp. So I'm just going to see what else I've got that might also work. Oh, there's like a vintage map of Toronto that might come in handy. It's so interesting when I start getting images out that just happen to be in my blue drawer. Like this image of like a derelict drive-in also kind of has a lost feeling to it. Wilderness is a good All right, well that actually yielded quite a few possibilities, actually. Too many actuallys in that sentence. Need to edit it. All right. Yeah, because like a big city is a nice place to get, is a nice metaphor for being lost. Map, same thing, like a map even more so in some ways because it's about wayfinding. right. So I think what I'm going to do is tape a couple of pieces and then cut the shape through them so that I have options. Definitely want that map as one option. And maybe there's something else I can use as well. Or do I want them to be somewhere else? Yeah, I think, for instance, it'd be interesting to have this sort of like in the foreground, there are fewer buildings and they're more clearly certain buildings, whereas here it's like an aerial view of a bunch of different buildings with the exception of the CN Tower, but the rest are, and maybe those could show through one or two of, or several of these. So and I sort of want the CN Tower not to be dominant. So I might, and this image isn't quite as wide either, so as this, so I have to decide which side I want it to go to. All right. All right, tape, where are you? There we are. All right, good. All right, I'm just going to check in with what you guys are talking about here. All right. Annie says, haha, caught me. I'm working on sketch prompts for March. Oh, so what happens in the month of March? Is there a drawing? Month in March? Oh yeah, the March sketchbook, right? Yeah, I've forgotten about that. That's hilarious. I see that Kim's in the chat now. Lisa says, is the artist project the show for 12 by 12 pieces? No, the artist project is at the Better Living Center, and it is it's designed to be for artists who for independent artists rather than artists represented by a gallery. So some artists do find, some galleries go to the artist project and find artists, but it's also a great way to just see all kinds of, I actually think, now I'm in it, so of course I'm biased, but I actually think that the quality is really high of the artist project. I think each year it gets stronger. And you can, one of the main thrusts is, because it's not for gallerists, the artist is required to be there for the majority of the time. So most of the time you go there, unless you just happen to be unfortunate and they're out for a lunch break or whatever, or they've got someone covering for them, you can talk to the artists. So one of their main marketing thrusts is meet the artists. Which is great. Not everyone wants to talk to the artist, but I have so many interesting conversations with showgoers there. So yeah, it's a high quality show. Um, they they have like a fashion show on the opening night, so like models walk up and down and around the show on the, I think that's the Thursday night. Um, what else? They like Issues magazine store has a booth there, and so they have like drop-in collage sessions there. So that's kind of cool. Um, yeah, and several other things. They have an untapped zone, I think they call it, where there are um, student works. They have some installation arts spread throughout the show. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. Um, so I'm just catching up with the comments here. Nice. I don't know if you're still with us, Kim, but nice to have you along. Thanks for dropping in. Uh, Yeah, Kim, I was telling Lisa about how well, I was telling the whole group about your working your way through your limbo and your unsweetened cocos and no carbs, and so everyone was curious about that. Um, Thank you. That looks cool. Yeah, I think it kind of does actually. I don't know whether you're talking about what I was doing earlier or with this one, but there is something neat about just the way it is now. So I might have to think about that. It's giving Magritte vibes. Yeah, it is, isn't it? um, and Kim answered what the artist project is, so great. Yeah, and Art Toronto is run by the same organizers as the artist project, so they do both shows with different slants. Yeah, there was live music at the opening. That's right. Installation projects can be really interesting. Oh, okay. Earlier version of this one. Right. Right. Before I put in the background. So, yeah, there was. Yeah, I just was saying that I thought that it was perhaps not enough. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I like minimalist, but no, when just the CN Tower piece was higher. Ah, okay. That's when the CN Tower piece was higher. Ah, all right. Well, let me. I don't remember what that looked like, so I'm just going to move it again to sort of take a look. I might not keep it there, but because my main reason for positioning it where I had positioned it was not so much what shows through the figure as where the idea that I'm going to cut these panels out and have bits of the cityscape showing, but I'm game to like move it up to just see whether. Yeah, I mean, you could put the entire tower in there, right? And that would be interesting, just from a compositional point of view. That high, maybe higher than that. I want it to be in this area. All right, let's see what happens taking some of these. Playing with some of these things. Trust it to get animated when Kim joins us. Thank you, Kim. I know Kim was working on editing her video for her traditional class, but she's also getting ready for the second class in her gel plate course, gel plate image transfer course for Quest Art. Is anyone here in that? I'm reminded by the fact that I'm trying to cut the same shapes as this one, and it's so hard to get it perfect as the one you're cutting through. So they're not going to be exactly the same. If you want them to be exactly the same, you should cut them at the same time. But sometimes you don't realize that, right? So you have to retrofit. And that's sort of what's going on here. Janice, I know you're in Midland. Do you take very many courses at Quest? Whether they're Zoom or in person? And I see that Kim Kim says, I don't think Rebecca is here, so I'll remind everyone to please like the video if you're enjoying it. Yep, it helps it get seen. Thank you, Kim. And Kim says, lots of homework to do for her business course, so she's bowing out. Nice. She's probably gone, but thanks for joining us, Kim. That was nice. Nice to have you along. Little guest appearance from the other room. All right, I'm trying to decide, and if I can't find my ruler, that may decide it for me whether or not to cut these shapes using a ruler or not. Sometimes due to photographic lens distortion, straight lines actually aren't ruler straight in photographs, so I'll see whether they look pretty straight. So in this case, I might use the ruler. But often also, it's like everything, it's a decision, right? Do you want a sort of more human straight line when I do it freehand so it has a bit of imperfection, or do I want crispness? The ruler will also make it sort of faster in some senses, because I don't have to. I generally cut more slowly if I'm cutting freehand than with a ruler. So, but I'm also noticing that, yeah, I'm going to do it freehand because I want to include the sort of shadow areas, and like these little battens or whatever they are, stop a little shy. So they have a, yeah, I think there are some things that I want to do that, it's so difficult sometimes. Like this shadow is fuzzy. So like, where do I decide the shadow is going to be, right? If these yellow or yellowish pieces are coming out, it's only the shadow that remains that will be seen. So I may come back to my ruler after all and use it to determine the shadow's shape. But with ruler, well, with both either, it's actually difficult. You have to be really careful if you don't want to lose, like cut right through these skinny pieces. Now, if I did, I could always fix it with tape, but I like the challenge sometimes of cutting it precisely enough that that's not necessary. I don't. Sometimes I wonder, why am I doing this? I come up with some idea and then I realize it's more harebrained than I thought. So this might be a case in point. But to that end, or further to that, it's not a big deal, right? It's paper. It's if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? It's not that big a deal. It's not like I'm rolling the dice with my health or my finances, right? I'm just trying something that might not work with paper. So it's good to remind ourselves of things like that. When we worry, we sort of will often worry disproportionately about whether it's going to work, right? You know what? If it doesn't work, yeah, it's a little bit of a disappointment, but you'll learn something. You'll sort of figure out, okay, why didn't it work? Oh, maybe it was this, maybe it was that. And you might say, okay, well, it still had promise. I just need to change it. But even if it's an abject failure, it probably won't be an abject failure. But if it doesn't work out, it's fine, right? It's no big deal. It's just one of many in a continuum of your creative output. So I don't know. So thinking about that a little bit more, about the idea of like some work, some don't, right? Do any of you guys think about like what your average is? Like how many, like if you do 10 pieces, how many do you find you're happy with at the end? Or that you might, that's always kind of an interesting thing, I think, because I think it's different for everyone, right? Like some artists say, you know, oh, it's like I'm lucky out of 25 if I get one. And some people are like, try to make every one like that. And everyone's a little different. It depends on the nature of your process. If you do very experimental processes, then of course you're probably going to have a higher failure rate. And also, like, what do you deem a success, right? Like, for me, I have a couple of different yardsticks for me. Like when I'm making work, which I'm often doing in time for a show, right? Like once I've finished it and have looked at it again after a day or two or a week or whatever, and I still think it has merit to show, then that's sort of like a basic level success. But on another level, like there's the work that several years later you look at and you think, yeah, that was not just worthy of the album, but that was a single, right? Or it was a hit. And if you're lucky, it was a hit single. So there's that idea of like what level of success. I remember reading Neil Peart, the drummer of Rush, said that someone asked him about like the songs that they didn't end up finishing or that they didn't put on albums. And I was really shocked because he said, we don't have any of those. We never give up on a song. And I thought, like, wow, really? How is that even possible? So they would rework the song until they thought it was worth at least putting on the album. So instead of like, if they reached an impasse with something, instead of trying to make another one, make something new, they would just keep chipping away at that to try and refine it or improve it or maybe even do wholesale changes to it. And I just found that fascinating because for me, I have so many pieces that don't get finished or that get finished, but then I don't like them enough, right? They might have something, but so, you know, my pathway is littered with pieces that get half done and then get abandoned. Now, that said, I think out of the pieces I finish, I think my average is pretty high, but I will often sort of stop halfway and sort of put it aside and never get back to it. Or I get back to it and look at it and think, yeah, it's still not going where I want to go. So I'm curious what you guys find with your own process. Do you find what is your batting average, would you say? So I was asking Janice about Quest, and she said she was at Quest last week to see new exhibits and inquire about courses. Kim's is sold out. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's often the case with hers. But that's good, actually, because Quest is on, I think everyone knows Quest can use the money, right? So it's awesome when Kim can have a fully subscribed course and be able to help them earn just a little bit. So Annie says of her Februallage pieces, 5x5, she likes about 12 of them, mostly for being out of the box. This is more than I expected. Yeah, that's actually pretty great. Like what is that? That's like that's over a third. So that's a pretty good batting average for sure. Now, probably in a few months you'll look at it and it'll be a bit fewer than that. But still, that's awesome. That's a nice batting average. I also think one of the benefits of doing something like Februallage, right, is that most of what we do, like art, anything we do, right, basically, whether it's meditating, art, cooking, working out, whatever, right, the more of it you do, the better you get, right? And that's actually one of the real benefits of taking on something like Februallage is you have this structure so that you're doing something every day. Or if you miss a day or two, you're trying to then catch up, right? So it means that you're thoroughly engaged in your creative process, and I think that also ups your likelihood of success too. So honestly, I'm not sure what I'm doing with this. I can either talk or I can cut. And I've been talking a lot, so you can tell that this is going slowly as a result. So all right, so now I've been focusing on my cutting and I've gone silent. Sorry, guys. That's so funny. All right, I want this to include the shadow, maybe less of the shadow on this side, not nothing. So maybe here. You know what I'm going to end up with is just like this huge whack of like jigsaw puzzle pieces that I'm going to have to try and piece together in some sort of way. And so I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? And then I think, oh, wait a minute, that could speak well to Lost, right? So maybe what I'm doing is creating a piece that's about being lost in a different way than I thought I was, right? It's being lost in the keeping the collage together way. That's pretty funny. Well, I see we're coming up on 3:30, so it always flies by. I'll probably go a few extra minutes, but if you need to cut out in a few minutes, that's completely understandable. Let us know in the comments what you decided to do if you were working with the prompt. do you have like a collage underway? What interpretation of the theme did you choose? Let us know, and also looking forward to seeing your posts. If you do finish or even partially, you can show us work in progress as well on the in the Virtual Collage Jam Facebook group. That'd be awesome. Well, I don't know whether I'm going to stick with my original idea or not, even though it was only a half-baked idea of like showing different things through. But if I'm going to, or what I want to do is like, I've got like for this piece, I've got the front piece, the city piece, and the map piece. So I'm going to want those to, I'm going to want to put those somewhere where I can keep track of them. So at least somewhat try to. So I'll keep track of them as best I can until I know whether or not I want to need to, right? And then if I decide I don't need to, then I don't have to worry about it. But until then, I'll try and I didn't cut through perfectly some of these, so they're a bit harder to, you know how it is. You know what I'm dealing with, that frustration of not getting all the way through. It's so much easier to get it right the first time than to come back and correct it, but sometimes you have to help it along a bit. All right, is that all the way through? No. Can I match that edge? Maybe. Uh-oh. Got extra pieces. That's pretty funny. All right. One thing that is kind of cool about this process that I'm doing, and I find this with a lot of collages actually, is I come up with whatever idea I've come up with, right? And then there are pieces that, like this one, where I don't think I'm actually going to be using this piece, but it's a really interesting piece, right? So it might find its way into this collage or another one. Or I may find that the original idea that I'm working on, I abandon because the idea has yielded these other more interesting things, right? So I do try and, oh boy, more water. I do try and keep an open mind as far as as I'm working along, like, is the original plan just a is it becoming a stepping stone to something else that's more interesting, I think is really what I'm trying to say. And it sometimes does, right? So it's like, oh, this idea, I'm not so keen on it anymore, but something else is happening, right? So like, one thought that's just come to mind, I was just thinking about, boy, it's really dark in this part of the image, sorry. I was thinking about, oh, like trying to fit these pieces into each other is going to be like a real struggle to get them to line up. And like, I can be pretty precise, so I think I could probably manage it, but maybe there would be something more interesting about it not lining up quite perfectly and feeling a little bit like it's out of register, whatever I put in those spaces. So that's kind of like an opportunity that's hiding there, I think, like this idea of like the collage addresses the difficulty of its making by how it's come out. Something I always really liked with Warhol's work, his silkscreen pieces, was the slight, like he would make and it take, because he worked a little bit like printing processes and his silk screens, and the way they would sometimes be not quite in alignment, and it would make them more interesting. Like taking an error and making it an asset. And I think that there might be something about that here too. So I just flipped it over because I hadn't quite cut all the way through, and this is easier to find the edges than it was on through the top. So that's all I'm doing here. And I'm missing, apparently. Oh well. All right. My silly, laborious process is going to take longer than our collage jam. Why am I not surprised? All right, I'm going to leave that where it's at. Work in progress. You know, I have occasionally finished something on Virtual Collage Jam, but more often than not, I get something started, right? So, all right, I'm going to swing over here to come back this way. And I'll just take a quick look at any last comments that you guys have made, and drink some water before I keep yakking. All right, so Jane says, I'm not sure I look at stuff as unsuccessful because I'm never sure of what I'm doing. Yeah, I think that's, you know, sometimes we start out with a very clear idea, but oftentimes we're heading off into the wilderness, and so we don't have this frame to impose on it of what we were trying to do, right? So if you don't know what you're trying to do, that can be liberating. So yeah, exactly. She works mostly, but not always, from scraps. So if it's not what I want at the moment, it will be at some point. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, that's more about being open to what happens in the process, right? So I try to do that too, even if I've got a plan. So I've got the plan in one side of my brain, and the other side of the brain is looking for other possibilities. And you sort of take the plan piece and don't worry about that, and then just start looking for opportunities, which is cool. Lisa says, that's a great attitude, Jane. And yeah, isn't it? So Janice says she got halfway, then got stuck on deciding. Wow. Sometimes deciding, finalizing. So yeah, so that, Janice, when you get to that point, oftentimes that's a good time to put it aside. I think, for me anyway, if I get to a point where I'm unsure, I will put it aside, start something else, or take a break and then come back to it and just see whether there's something else that suggests itself. Lisa says, wow, nice glass 4 effect, Kat. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Janice says, surgical precision. Well, yeah, I wouldn't want my knife skills to be surgical, but there is a bit of precision. Thank you. Annie says she's found that working small, like 5x5, keeps her on topic when deciding which materials to use. Yeah, so something I had my students in one of my other collage classes working on small studies for that reason. Yeah, I was just looking to see if I think I may have even showed them last week, or last collage jam. So anyway, the idea being, like, when you're small, it first of all, you can't cut too many tiny pieces, right? Because it's tiny to begin with. So, and having it small really helps you just keep the composition and the idea simpler, for sure. And I know that, like, I don't know, some of you guys probably know Steve Rose, who teaches at Nielsen Park Creative Center. And something that he would have people do was, like, find crops of things, like old paintings or drawings or whatever. And when you find a crop, basically you're making whatever is still in the crop is bigger, right? If you've got a painting that's got all kinds of detail, but you only look at this part, if you're just looking at that part, it's got just a very few big shapes. And he was saying he had people then make paintings of those, because oftentimes when we think, oh, okay, I'm doing a big painting, and it's the same would apply to a big collage, right? I'm doing a big piece, so I can have all kinds of stuff, right? And actually, even if it's a big piece, it benefits from having some big elements, right? Rather than a big piece with a lot of small and medium-sized elements, it needs some big elements too, right? So that's a great way to sort of circumvent that instinct of ours to put too many things in when we go larger. So yeah. Anyway, I'm yakking, and it's time to quit. So I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time. Just can check my calendar, what date that is. Where are you, calendar? Oh, for heaven's sakes. Well, it's 2 weeks from now. So it is March the 10th. And I will put the theme on my website. And thank you so much, guys, for joining me. It's been lots of fun. And thank you, Lisa. And thank you, Annie and Janice. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and me too. It's always fun hanging out with you guys. And yeah, I have a theme picked. I just can't remember it off the top of my head. So I will post it on my website, and I will email it a few days ahead, just like I always do. And Janice, I think I maybe need to add you to my Virtual Collage Jam list. If you subscribe to my newsletter page, I just have to set you so that you get the Virtual Collage Jams, and I'll do that. So have a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you on March the 10th. Meanwhile, keep on collaging, and do post whatever you do for Collage Jam or any other collages in our Collage Jam group on Facebook, so we can all see them, get a better look. So, all right, guys, see you in 2 weeks. Take care.